So when we talk about, earthworms and water infiltration, so I mean, like, there's a baby worm, there's another worm, but look at all these earthworm holes. You can actually see the impression in the soil where this worm drilled down to this point and then turned this way and then went down again. But when you start seeing more earthworms, holes, soil aggregation, a little organic matter in there, see if we can find you a good hole. So like right here, it's like there's an earthworm hole, there's an earthworm hole. So what a lot of people don't think about, on our farm we look at crops kind of like concrete. Some of the ground we pick up, it's as hard as concrete. And if you're going to drill concrete, you drill it with a small bit, make a pilot hole, and then you drill it with the big bit. Well, these earthworms are drilling all of these little tiny holes right here, and those are the pilot holes. So we're already making holes that go down into the profile that are full of earthworm castings, which have nutrition in them. And now we have a pore space for air to come into the soil, so we're getting a correct air balance in the soil. We're not anaerobic, even with these floods. And then the next thing that happens is we plant corn, and there's a perfect hole right here already. So when you talk about compaction, if you come out here with a pentrometer, like we talked about in season 1, and you hit 150 PSI, that root growth stops by 50%. You hit 300 PSI, those roots ain't going anywhere except horizontal until they find something. Well, we've got thousands and millions of these little earthworm holes that this corn crop, as soon as it starts to root, it doesn't have to fight through the soil at all. It's already pre-drilled. And there's another little guy coming out. But it's already pre-drilled with these earthworm holes that it's able to find, like, there's probably a square inch and there's 1, 2, 3 earthworm holes. So that means in a square inch, that corn plant can put 3 roots down as fast as it has the energy to and get deeper in the profile to moisture, to nutrients. One of the things that, we've been working on is where's our nutrition coming from? So right now, the best that we can tell is 50% of our plant nutrition is coming from the top 6 inches, 40% from the 6 to 12, and 10% from the 12 to 18. And so when we look at, the deep injection bar, the fertility, balancing pH, we're trying to get everything right down to 2 feet. And if we get everything right down to 2 feet, we've taken care of about 80 to 90% of the nutrition of that plant, is going to need. And earthworms and the biologicals and the stuff we're using, I mean, I'm still pulling earthworms out of just one chunk of soil. And so that's what I'm saying, you start getting, not picking on them. Me and Marion have had conversations about it at conferences the last 2 years. Marion's doing this study on nutrient stratification and, I think he's pulling samples every inch and looking at where's their P and their K at. Well, we know that there's 2 million pounds of soil in the top 6 inches. Well, for every million earthworms that you have, you're turning 40 to 60,000 pounds of soil in the top 6 inches every year. So if we're running, say we're running 4 million earthworms here, which is pretty close to where our counts are now, that means that we're turning 250, 300,000 pounds of dirt a year just with earthworms. And so you start looking at that, every 6 years, it would be the same as us running a mold bore plow and turning the whole top 6 inches completely over. And we're not paying for the fuel, we're not paying for the iron, we're not disturbing the soil biology with tillage, we're not disturbing the earthworms with tillage, we're letting it do it naturally. And this isn't something that happened overnight. I mean, when we got this farm, I think our earthworm counts were probably 10 per cubic foot. Now we're pushing that 100 per cubic foot, 90 to 100. So like I said, that's about 3.5 to 4 million earthworms. And so there's ways to build the soil without having to use a lot of tillage, but it does take time. So kind of got to pick your poison. Do you take the short-term game or do you look at the long-term game? I'm hoping to farm for the next at least 30 years, maybe into my 60s. And, for me to look at that long-term down the road, using it with natural biology and earthworms and stuff like that definitely makes it worth it.